Hello, hello, hello. It is Dr. Cree, and Happy New Year. Welcome to 2018. This is the first broadcast of the Dr. Cree and Me show. We are so excited today to have our show. Hey, Kiana Hudson, Happy New Year. I know everybody's getting ready for the Alabama game that's getting ready to come on, so I'm not going to hold you long. But tonight, I thought it was important, instead of me waiting another week to come on because of the holiday, with the loss of the amazing news anchor Amanda Davis on last week. I thought it would be great if we came on and talked about the 4 signs I think I did six signs of a stroke. So we're going to talk about those 6 signs. They're way more than 6, but we're going to talk about those important ones. I went to college in Atlanta, and Amanda Davis was one of the news anchors that we grew up on. She was there. She was one of the people that when 9/11 happened, I remember listening to her. So we were very, very, very saddened to hear that she passed away. She actually was in Atlanta, I think it was Atlanta, and she was preparing to fly to her stepdad's funeral, and she ended up having a stroke there at the airport, and she never gained consciousness. She was about 60 years old. So we offer our greatest sympathy to her and her family. And I feel like it's a perfect opportunity to talk about things like stroke. Amanda Davis wasn't old. 60 isn't really old nowadays. So we have to be mindful that things can happen. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. I know we only got a few minutes because y'all are watching the end of the Georgia game and getting ready for Alabama to play. I'm Dr. Cree. I'm a board-certified family medicine physician. I specialize in what's important to you through my one-on-one coaching, my telemedicine, my concierge practice. I help you learn to live a healthier, happier, more amazing life. And tonight we're going to talk about 6 signs of a stroke in light of the death of the amazing news anchor Amanda Davis. So I wanted to make sure that I jumped on here really, really fast in spite of the holiday instead of waiting till next week, because I know a lot of people have been talking about her and her untimely death. So let's talk about what a stroke is. So, hey Dave, hey everybody, hey Keisha, hey Miss Banks, hey Ava, welcome. Hey Arnika, welcome everybody. So a stroke is when you have a damage to your brain. That could be buildup of a plaque that causes an interruption in the blood supply in a certain area in your brain. That could be cholesterol, plaque, or it could be from bleeding of a broken blood vessel. So you can have a bleeding stroke, which is super emergent. You really need to get people to the hospital if you see that stroke happening in front of you, because we really don't know without imaging their head if they have had a bleeding stroke or a non-bleeding stroke. So a stroke happens when you have damage to the blood supply or a blood clot. Yes, thank you, to the blood going toward in the brain. Sorry. So just be mindful that can happen. So it's kind of like a heart attack in the brain. So just FYI. So one thing that can happen when people actually have a stroke is, one, they can have balance issues. So they could actually, walk and tend to want to fall, trip. They've had this episode in their brain, and if it's on this side of the brain, the deficits is going to be on the right side of the body. If it's on the right side of the brain, the deficits will be on the left side of the body because of the way the brain is so intertwined. So they can have balance issues. If they have an attack, hey Cherie, if they're having an attack over here on this side, then they may tend to be falling because they're not able to hold their balance on the opposite side. So they may favor one side over the other. Number 2, somebody type that in for me. 1 is balance issues. 2 is actual weakness. Once again, you have the issue or the injury on this side of the brain, and the opposite side is just totally weak. You'll be like, hey, can you squeeze my hand? And they really are trying to squeeze as hard as they can. You can tell that they're trying as hard as they can. However, they not squeezing your hand. You're like, can't you squeeze it? Don't try not to hurt me, but squeeze it. They don't end up squeezing it. And so you're like, okay. Or you have them like say, press the gas. Press like you pressing the gas in a car. They can't do that. It's just kind of like a heavy sensation. So number 1 is they have balance issues. Number 2 is weakness. Thank you, Cherie. Number 1, balance issues. 2 is weakness. 3 is the common facial droop on one side. Facial droop. So we have to be mindful because there's something else that can really mimic a stroke that's called Bell's palsy. So when people have Bell's palsy, they have the stroke, the one side of the face that's affected. This eye may be droopy, this side of the mouth may be droopy, but they don't have limbs or arm, leg, speech deficits. They just have the drooping. However, when you have a stroke can cause you to have droopiness of the face, twisting of the mouth, along with the weakness and the balance issues. So we said number 1, balance issues. Number 2, weakness. 3, facial droop on that side, on one side of the mouth. 4 could be slurred speech or speech changes in general. I've seen people that have had strokes and their speech is slurred, or they can't find the right words. They're like trying to find the right words, and they get so frustrated because they know the right words. They know that the words are in there. See ya. I'm about to have a stroke. I got a lot of money on this game. I'll rewatch. Okay, Keisha, have fun. And we'll see you later. We know Alabama's coming on next. Thanks for tuning in for a few minutes. For y'all not watching, it's Georgia 38, Oklahoma 31. And there's 10 minutes and 54 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Anyway, so it's a balance issues, weakness, facial droop on one side, changes in the speech is number 4. They can be slurred speech or they can be word finding. Like, oh my gosh, they know that word. They know that that's a brown car, but they cannot find the right words to come out with that's a brown car. You don't have to be highly educated to know that it's a brown car. So it's something that that they should know. But they cannot get the words out. The word comes to mind. That's like what we call expressive aphasia. So they can't get the words out, which is very frustrating to a stroke patient. 1 is loss of balance. 2 is weakness. 3 is facial droop. 4 is slurred or changes of your speech. Number 5 can be a headache. This isn't your normal everyday, I'm having a headache, I got this migraine going on. This is like a thunderclap headache that comes on all of a sudden. The worst headache you ever had in your life. It debilitates you. I can't get up out the bed. I'm throwing up along with it. So it can mimic kind of a migraine, but it's different than a migraine. So headache can be the onset of the symptoms. Then as they progress, hey Andrea, you can have the slurred, the weakness, the droop, all of that. So just know that headaches, if you're not used to having headaches on a regular basis, be mindful that, okay, all of a sudden I got this headache, plus I'm super nauseated. This is a problem. This could be a problem. So we said balance issues, weakness, facial droop, slurred speech, headaches. All of a sudden that can be, debilitating. Worst one ever. Could be a stroke, but also could be a brain bleed. So if the worst one ever, we start paying attention and watching people pretty closely. So be mindful of that. And number 6, you can have decreased sensations or tingly and prickly on that same. All of it is usually just on one side. If you're having a stroke, you're not going to be weak on this side and then weak on this side. Like it's not moving in that regard. It's just going to be one side tingling, just feeling like your hands sleep or your legs sleep. It's just going to be like a really just tingling sensation. So all of these are signs that you can know, hey, I may be having a stroke or my family member may be having a stroke, but it's going to be issues with your balance, weakness, facial droop, slurred speech, headaches, sensation diminish. So we talked about what a stroke is, having a blood clot in the brain or damage to the blood supply or interruption of the blood supply. So in the American Heart Association, they give you this quick acronym that is called fast. So that way you don't have to remember those 6 things that I was telling you about. You can remember, hey, face, is their smile uneven? You can have people to smile. If they hadn't had a stroke, they shouldn't be, you see how my smile is symmetrical. If I had one side, it'd be droopier. Even if you had them look at their tongue, when I look at my tongue, you see it's straight. Well, if you had a stroke, your tongue even to be droopy. It kind of turns to the side. So face, making sure everything's even and symmetrical. Arm, having to hold their arms out like this. Yes, y'all see my Superman outfit. Have them hold their arms out like this. And if one side is weaker than the other, then be mindful. Be mindful that could be a sign of a stroke. Of course, S is slurred speech. So F is for face, if it's even or not. A is for arm, if it's weak or not. S is for speech, if it's slurred or not. And T is for timing. So in the medical community, we need to know the time that these symptoms originated. Because if they having a bleeding stroke, we have to have in a certain amount of window within a couple of hours, we need to be getting you can get the clot suction out, the whole 9. So you really need to, if you can, pinpoint like, oh, they passed out right in front of me. And when I got to them, the face was drooped over. I have an exact time. It happened at 2:55. So I called the paramedics and said, hey, this is what happened. T is time. FAS, speech, and T is time. So you can pick up the phone, you call 911, and you can say, hey, I'm pretty sure my family member had a stroke. So be mindful that strokes happen very, very, very suddenly. Stroke in this disease, yes, we are sorry for the loss of Amanda Davis, but I've been affected in my family twice by strokes. 2 years ago, in my house, my dad had a stroke in front of us. My mom called in the middle of the night and was like, well, from upstairs and downstairs. It was like, yeah, your dad had been throwing up. This morning he started throwing up. And we really don't know why he's throwing up. And I'm like, well, he got bad acid reflux. I'll send some medicine up there. Send some medicine upstairs. Even with the Phenergan acid reflux medicine, he was still throwing up. So this wasn't in the middle of the night. This probably had to be about 6 o'clock. So by 7, Dad got up to use the bathroom. And she said, well, he been throwing up so much now he can't hardly walk. I said, he can't walk. She said, no, he can't hardly walk. She said, he's very, very, very weak. I think he done got dehydrated. Well, from 6 to 7, that was not enough hours of throwing up in my mind that would contribute, would be okay for him to dehydrate himself throwing up, whatever. So I told my husband, I said, let me get up from here and let me go and check on Dad because that just didn't sound right. So if you've not met my dad is about 275, 280. He is not a small man. So I get upstairs and he's sitting on the toilet, not using the bathroom, but he's just sitting there on the toilet with his arms rested on the sink. And I got to the door and I could look at him. I said, Daddy, you don't look right. I said, what's wrong? He said, my hand's asleep. He was doing his hand like this. I said, could you stand up? Can you stand up? And he went to try and lift himself up to stand up. He said, I can't stand up. I can't stand up. I said, oh, no. It's time for us to go to the ER. So luckily my husband was home and my brother was home because at this time my husband was traveling for his job. So downstairs I was like, okay, Jay, Matt, y'all got to get up. We got to get Dad to the ER. Well, it didn't cross my mind to call 911. I picked up the phone to call the emergency room myself and was like, hey, something's wrong with my dad. I'm pretty sure he's either really dehydrated or he's just having a stroke. I was like, okay, get him out here. So we rushed him to the hospital. By now, it's about 7:30. We get him to St. Vincent's East. They put him on the monitors. They get him, his blood pressure was lower. High blood pressure is a risk factor for a stroke, just FYI. He has high blood pressure. He has high cholesterol. We get him there, and he's on the monitor, and Dad's blood pressure is like 101 over 90, over 101 over 60 something. Well, that's a low blood pressure. That's too low. He never's 100 and some over whatever. So I was like, okay, I think this man's had a stroke. So I'm trying not to freak my mama out. So as Jay and Matt had walked him down the steps, I was like, Dad, hold your arms out. So he holds his arm out and one side goes down. I said, oh, good God, I think you're having a stroke. We got to get you to the ER. So we get him to the ER, and thankfully the team there was very, very, very quick, and they got him on the right medicine, and he got sick at about 7, but by 10 his face had completely twisted. And I still continue to work that day because my practice is attached to St. Vincent. So I just kept working. I couldn't do nothing but sit, and I just went back and forth. So by 10 o'clock, I get back over there, and I was like, what have y'all done to him? His face is not twisted. We got him here in the appropriate amount of time. What's happening? So his brain was still doing this thing. He had a stroke in the back part of his brain. Very, very, very small area. They had to lay him back flat, give him oxygen. He had to lay flat on his back for about 24 hours. Ooh, y'all, Oklahoma just scored. I'm gonna be quick. So he laid flat on his back for 24 hours. When they set him up the next day, his mouth was not twisted anymore. Well, the irony of this story is my parents live about 90 miles from my house. There's no local hospital near them. The closest hospital is about 30 minutes away. Had my dad been at home, this would be a very different story, because you see from 7 to 10, the symptoms progress that quickly. And so I'm so very happy that they were at my house. My mom was getting on a plane the next day to go get her PhD. She never went. She was still awarded her PhD, but we were at the hospital during that time. She didn't go. She stayed with my dad. But I'm so very happy and blessed that they were there, and that I knew all the signs of a stroke. I knew what that was. I knew that everything. I can remember everything except for calling 911. We put him in the car, and we got them there faster than 911 would have been able to get to my house. So thankfully, now my dad has very little residual symptoms from his stroke. You can't physically look at him and tell. I can tell because I know him. But his is more memory things. He sings a lot, so it's more wording and songs and stuff like that. So I can tell. But to the average person, you can't tell. I'm so very thankful that he was at my house when it happened. And so that was 2 years ago. And now Dad is back up. He's teaching. Hopefully he's going to retire and live out the rest of his best days. Somewhere on an island somewhere. But that's why it's so important to know the signs, because these things happen so fast. And thankfully they were in my house in Birmingham, 15 minutes from the hospital and not 95 miles from the best hospital. So I'm thankful. Thank the Lord for that. And then secondly, in July, I had an uncle. My uncle doesn't take any medicine. He's not on high blood pressure medicine. He's not on cholesterol medicine. He just got arthritis. He called. We had gone on vacation. He said, I'm in the hospital because I had a stroke. What you mean you had a stroke? You're not sick enough to have a stroke. You're worse than enough to have a stroke. You probably get on somebody's nerves enough to have a stroke, but you're not sick enough to have a stroke. He said, and it's been bleeding on the brain. It's been bleeding on your brain. What are you talking about? So oddly enough, my uncle was at work. He's in the Army. He was at work, and it happened in front of somebody, and they realized the signs and symptoms of a stroke. They called the ambulance. They got him to the nearest stroke center. He ended up having several arteriograms to look at the back of his head. And he had what was called a AVM. Arterial vascular malformation, which causes stroke in 1% of the world. But thankfully somebody saw his signs and his symptoms and realized, hey, let me act fast. He wasn't right. They saw those signs and symptoms, got him to the nearest stroke unit, stroke center, and this place was amazing. They didn't have a neurosurgeon near him, so the robot came and saw him like a telemedicine, and the man would see him every day and look at him and do his exam. And so he did his therapy, 21 days of therapy there in New Jersey. And he came to my house. And he's been recovering with my family ever since then. He's recently been discharged from therapy. Ivy Rice was his therapist, and she did an amazing job. But now he uses a cane to get around, but he's alert, and he's on one medication. Well, he's on 2 medications. So all of this happened because their story was what it was because somebody was able to be there and see all the signs and symptoms. Know the signs and symptoms. Act fast because it could be your family member and you want that story. Keep your blood pressure under control as much as you can. Go visit your doctor. I'm Dr. Cree. I thank you for joining in. And the game, I don't see the score, but it's almost time for Alabama to play, and I know y'all are excited about that. But I'm Dr. Creed. I am a board certified family medicine physician, and I specialize in you, the normal everyday person. I specialize in you and what's important to you. And it's my job, through my teaching, through my one-on-one coaching, through my telemedicine, my concierge, and my amazing practice here in Birmingham. It's my job to help you live a healthier, happier life. I feel like when you know better, you do better. So now that you know these symptoms, you can find this out. So from my heart to yours, and from my family to your family, Happy New Year. Enjoy the night, be safe, and enjoy the game, because it's tied up 38-38, and we're in the fourth quarter. We got 8 minutes and 38 seconds. You got time to go watch the game. Check me out if you want to do a free strategy session with me. You can at Dr. Creed. That's DoctorCreed.as.me. That's A as in Apple, S as in Sam, M as in Mary, M as in Mary, E as in Elephant. So that's drcreed.as.me. You know the signs of a stroke. You know what to do. Peace to the people. Have a good one. I'll see you next Monday.